kind of threw me off, and I'm still kind of reeling with it a little bit. And I wonder if you could talk about that, like how much of this was real footage, and how did you come to the conclusion that I need to recreate all of these things? And it's fascinating.
So I don't know what the exact ratio is. I'd have to go back and look at it, but my sense is it's about 40% is real archival footage of my family and about 60% recreated. I think the idea was to create a parallel experience for the audience to the one that I had going through this, which was a constant sense when I was interviewing people and even just talking to people on my own about this story and trying to get to the truth of what happened and what was the real story. This constant sense of wondering what was real, what was fact, what was subjective, what was imbued with nostalgia, what was someone's impression as opposed to what actually happened. And there's a constant sense of not really having ground and wondering like what is real and what isn't. And I think I wanted to create for the audience a parallel experience to that where you always kind of have to wonder if what you're seeing is really history or if it's someone's impression of history.
I was actually a little sad that there was actors playing and some of that foam. I was like, no, it broke my heart a little bit.
Betrayed.
Not betrayed, just like, no, they were so cute. I don't want them to be actors. I want them to be the real one. Yeah, right there.
So Sarah, I just saw the film and I was kind of processing what we just saw a few minutes ago. And the vast majority of films that we see in the press don't have much meaning to them at all. You see scores of movies, I'm sure you do, and we see a movie like Take This Waltz last year, which has so much going on. You got the dissolution of a marriage and the disillusionment with this fleeting feeling of love. And I think, as you said, the new things that get old is the great line in that movie. We see this movie tonight, and as you mentioned, it's a lot of things. It's like a Rashomon mystery. It's a chance to kind of meet your family, so it's a family story as well. There's love stories going on in the movie, and then there's a character studying with your mom who's this amazing woman like the Joie de Vivre that is so uncommon. So there's so many different ways to look at this movie, the substance of this movie. There's a lot of ground that's covered, and so I think for us to look at it, potentially there's a lot of different interpretations and meanings. Much like all the versions of the truth that you talked about. So I wonder when you look at this movie, what is the meaning of this movie to you? And I guess I don't mean the making of the film or what it meant during the process, but looking at the finished film, what strikes you the most?
Honestly, I think it's the fact that I still can't really see it. Like, I don't know what people are seeing when they see the film. Like, I find it so fascinating to hear responses or even to just hear you sort of break it down that way, because it's such a mess of perspectives in a way, and it took so many years to craft it into an actual film that I'm still unclear on, what somebody else would see. And some of the things that other people see are totally foreign to me, but fascinating. Like, people will see, various ones of my siblings to, like, really side with one or not with the other, or side with Harry or my dad, and I find it kind of fascinating to see how people are projecting their own lives onto the film and onto the material. So that's, I think for me, it's like a conversation piece. And in a strange way, I feel like the most enjoyable part of making this film is actually this part, which I've never thought before, like in terms of like doing press or talking to audiences or getting responses. This for me is like a continuation of the project because it's bringing up so many different perspectives that I could never have anticipated. So I find it kind of fascinating that like this for me is the point and the enjoyable part, and the making of the film was a total nightmare and a very claustrophobic experience, and I never had a clear idea what I was making. So I feel like I'm getting some clarity on what the point was by hearing people describe it to me, because it's very hard for me to see it, I think.
I have one more quick question for you. We sort of live in a world now where people love to be exposed. We live in a reality TV world where you can become famous by showing a sex tape or doing whatever it is. And what was your feeling about being exposed to being guarded in the making of this movie? Was there anything that was off limits to you, or that you felt you just didn't want to go there, or no?
I think not really, because the one thing that I loved about growing up in my family is there are no sacred cows. Like, there's nothing that you can't talk about. There's nothing you can't make a joke about. Like, nothing is off limits, which can be a nightmare sometimes,
We were
but
talking before, your family is dark.
they're dark. Yeah, they're a lot
They're
darker.
funny, but
They're
they're
darker
dark.
than they are in the film too. But I feel like it's yeah. So I never felt like there was something I needed to protect or hold back. I think that I sort of made a decision to sort of leave all of my thoughts and feelings out of it, or some of my thoughts and feelings out of it, because they seemed besides the point, but not because I was wary of sharing them. So I didn't feel nervous about exposing anything. I think partly because I never thought anybody would see it, to be honest. I just thought this movie would just get buried. Like, I thought it'll play the last day maybe of the Toronto Film Festival if I'm lucky and everybody's gone home. And like, it's just not the kind of movie that anyone's gonna care about, and like, thank God I'm not famous enough that anyone's like gonna kind of look this up. Like, so I think if I had known it was gonna be, you know, traveling to Chicago and different places around, you know, the world, I would probably have been more guarded, but you know, hindsight is 20/20.
When you talk about sort of the projection that people have, and sort of the, you know, their different interpretations of the movies, people who see this, do you think that when they go back and look at your two previous films, Away From Her and Take This Waltz, which are very sort of interesting dissections of sort of love and marriage and betrayal, do you think that they will now look upon those two movies as sort of like, oh, well, I see where she got the ideas for those movies? And one's obviously based on a story in Take This Waltz last year. If you haven't seen Take This Waltz, by the way, you should go get it tonight, seriously. Yeah, and do you I mean, is there a connection between your feelings on those two movies and the, you know, the story of your life, or is it clearly a projection?
I think I don't think it's a projection, but it wasn't conscious. So I feel like I actually learned from a review why I made those other two films. Like, I literally, like, there was a critic in Toronto who was like, this is the film she was trying to make. And I was like, what is he trying? Yeah. Like, it's very slow on the uptake.
Right.
Like, but I think that unconsciously, this was obviously the material I was mining in some way. And maybe that's why a lot of filmmakers or writers are constantly coming back to the same material. There's something in their past or something deep-seated that they're trying to grapple with in some way. And I think in my case, I was lucky to get to make the film about, you know, I sometimes feel like when I watch the film as though it was like, these were the shadows, these were the figures in the cave, and the other two films were the shadows of these figures.
Okay.
And now I've finally gone into the cave and made the film about
Right.
them. I just wonder, you know, now what? Like, maybe thematically I'll need to have a big departure after this.
Okay.
But I definitely feel like it's very legitimate to project a lot onto those first two films. I just wasn't conscious of it at the
Okay.
time.
It's sort of hard to see toward the back, but I guess see somebody